Welcome to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast, your weekly news roundup of hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories from around the Gem State. Hosted by Fish and Game's Public Information Specialist, Connor J. Lease.
We got to beat traffic out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah, we'll see how it goes.
Don't beat me up too bad.
Nah.
I've seen how you work.
No.
It's both people left today in tears.
Yeah,
We took it easy on him.
it did.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah. Yep. We are here with Terry Thompson, who, if you've listened to the Hook and Bulletin, I don't know what episode we're on now, but at least 50 episodes, you've heard our beautiful introduction from the soulful, sultry voice of
So sultry.
Terry Thompson. And if you live down here in the Magic Valley, you've probably also heard his voice 1,000 times. So
You've seen him on TV. You've heard him on the radio.
he's everywhere.
Without further introduction,
Here I am.
Terry Thompson.
Terry
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Welcome,
Everybody.
Terry.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to come on air with you guys today.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Terry.
And by the time this podcast airs, Terry Thompson will no longer be with us.
He'll be off the air.
And I don't mean it to sound like he won't be
Wow.
on off the earth, but he will just no longer be with the agency. Is
Man.
maybe how I should have phrased that.
Yeah, I got a little nervous when you started down that line of commenting.
Yeah.
Terry, this is coming at the end of how many years? Collectively.
I have been working for fish and game agencies for 34 years now.
Okay.
And did it start in Idaho or was it elsewhere?
It started in 1991 in Boise. I was actually the first, what they call Nature Center superintendent at the MK Nature Center there at headquarters building. When I started there was no trees.
That's hard to imagine. I mean, we walk through there every day. It's
Yep.
hard to imagine it without trees.
It's a forest now,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
Well, not for long. The beavers have anything to say
Oh
about
my,
it.
Yeah.
that's a whole nother podcast.
But that's the cool part about that place is that you're seeing nature or wildlife interacting on the landscape in downtown Boise. That building when I started was just getting framed. It was a class project for the Boise School District.
Oh,
And so, that was my first job with Fish and Game, and it has been a highlight reel from day one. I've never gone to work yet in 34 years. I always look forward to coming to work every day and doing things for sportsmen and women here in Idaho. And I also put in almost 20 years up in Alaska with Alaska Fish and Game. So it's been quite a career, and loved every minute of it.
yeah, that's wonderful to hear.
Well, you're really loved around here, Terry. I mean, not just the regional office, but the community too. We talked to somebody that has lived here for decades, and said that your voice is recognizable all throughout the
Yeah.
Wood River Valley and down here in Twin Falls and Jerome. But what's cool about today's topic and today's episode is you're kind of the closest to Bieri and I in the fish and game realm. Like you're a communications nerd by trade, just like we are, and dabble in a lot of the same daily responsibilities that we do. For the most part, you get your boots a lot dirtier than we do.
Totally.
Yeah.
But you shoot a camera, you know how to work a computer, you know how to write a press release, you know how to go on the air and do podcasts and radio and TV and stuff. And so that's kind of what we want to talk to you about today is you've been doing this for 34 years, and that might come as a bit of a surprise, not the 34 years, but the fact that there's a role at Idaho Fish and Game where you can, like with Bieri doing computer stuff, digital content stuff, and me doing writing stuff, and
Yeah.
you doing photography and everything else that Bieri and I do combined. Like there's roles at Fish and Game that you don't necessarily have to just be a biologist or just be a game warden,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So your job title currently is, for the next 72 hours, is Regional Communications Manager.
It is.
And I would be hard pressed if we went out and surveyed 10 people in the public at the Jacksons or the Flying J down the road that they would know what that means. or what you do. And that's what we want to educate the public on today. So,
Sure.
So what is a regional communications manager, and how does it fit into the role of the agency? There's our thesis.
And how many are there in the regions?
So there are six. I have six. There's six RC, what we call regional communication managers, or RCMs.
Mm-hmm.
There are six of us in the state. Each administrative region of the state has a regional communications manager, except for Salmon. They're a very small region and probably don't have. Well, I guess I won't say they don't have the workload, because I think the work we do is really important, because what it's doing is it's making sure that the public understands and knows what we're doing and why we're doing it. I always like to say I want the public to understand who we are and what we do. We don't get general tax money. We are funded by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and permits, and then some federal excise tax in there too. But it's public monies in that sense, and so I think it's critical that the public understands what we're doing, how we're spending their money, and what the benefits of how these license dollars are used to ensure that we have hunting, fishing, trapping into the future, and healthy fish and wildlife populations into the future. So, what we do is really important, because it keeps people informed about the activities of the agency and what we're learning, because ultimately, what we learn as an agency translates into healthy populations and huntable populations, or the number of fish. It provides opportunity to hunters, anglers, and trappers, and I think that's what Idaho has a really strong history in, is that you can still in Idaho go into a licensed vendor and buy a deer tag if you are a resident. And there's not a lot of states that you can do that in anymore, especially here in the West. So, I think Idahoans are very lucky to have the resources that we do here. So a lot of my job is to keep people informed, and because with information comes knowledge, and then they can ask us questions and understand why we're taking actions that we may have to take.
What are some ways that or some tools, I guess, in your metaphorical tool belt that you use to inform the public and our constituents?
So, that is a really great question, because as everybody keeps reminding me on a daily basis, I'm old. But, I've had 34 years of fishing game, and I started when I was 12, so I'm still pretty young.
Yeah, you're doing great.
I just grade, at an early age.
Yeah.
But
some people do.
But, I grew up in an era where, you'd get your newspaper delivered on your front porch every day. You would watch the 6 o'clock news on TV. And today's population, they're not getting that information the same way. So I think one of the biggest challenges we have as communication managers is, how do we tell the story? How do we get out there and make sure that the public, and when I say the public, that means all aspects of the public are hearing the message. Internally, I talk to staff, and they say, I don't watch the news. I get everything I need from TikTok and Facebook. Mm-hmm. And I guess maybe I'm too old school, but I don't look at those as news outlets myself. So, it's a challenge to try to reach people, because nothing frustrates me more than to have people say, I had no idea. I've never heard that. And I'm like, man, we are flooding what I think is the market with information. And so, but I think that's not just a fish and game challenge. That's a challenge for anybody trying to get information out to people to make them more knowledgeable and informed.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the communications world is changing rapidly. Algorithms are more and more pointed to what we desire. We tell it what to do, this algorithm. So how are we cracking And you specifically, how are you trying to crack that algorithm in the Magic Valley and the Wood River Valley?
So that's a great question, because I don't know if I'm doing anything different than anybody else.
Your
but
TikTok dances are not working.
Well, yeah, that would be pretty obvious if I was putting out a TikTok dance. But I think there's nothing better than face-to-face communication.
Yeah.
So I jump at any opportunity to go talk to Rotary, Kiwanis Club, Optimist clubs. Anytime at all that I can get in front of people, I jump at that chance because, one, it's a very effective way of getting the message out because you're able to get a feeling from the folks that you're talking to if they are having questions and you can have a dialogue. I think that's huge. Unfortunately, communication media is one way.
Yeah.
That's why I think, the opportunity to get in front of people is good. When I retired from Alaska Fishing Game, came back. I grew up in Twin Falls. I went to high school in Twin Falls, let's put it that way. And so I came back and they said, oh, and by the way, you have 7 radio shows per month that you're going to do. 3 of them are hour-long call-in radio shows on AM. And I was like, AM radio? Nobody listens to AM radio. But I'll tell you, that is the most amazing outreach tool that we have.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest outreach tool that I have at my fingertips here. We've got 2 radio show hosts that have been very welcoming to allow Fish and Game to come on their daily shows for an hour for call in, and it's really provided an opportunity that I don't know that is being used in many other places. But a lot of that goes back to the rural still lifestyle, agricultural lifestyle that we have here in the Magic Valley.
Exactly. And in some of those bigger city centers, it's harder to crack because and speaking from experience here with radio, like there's money attached to a lot of it. And the community aspect has slowly gone the way of the buffalo. Like it just is not a priority anymore. Traffic isn't a priority. Weather isn't a priority. But anytime I hear somebody talk about the radio and radio being dead, I hear those stories and I keep coming back to like, it's not dead. It's still viable. People are still listening, and it's still a wonderful place to spread a message.
I would absolutely agree. It's, but I'll admit, I am on air with 2 known radio personalities, which, makes it easier for me to reach folks. But I do a weekly or a bi-weekly call-in show here in Twin Falls, and the host tells me that the Fish and Game Hour is he's been through ratings and what is the most popular hour of his daily show. So people are interested. The one thing that I have tried very hard to do, and hopefully I've accomplished that, is transparency. We talk about good, bad, ugly that's happening within Fish and Game, because I think we owe it to the public to talk about those kind of things. And these shows have given us that opportunity. So it's interesting, and I still have frustrations even with all of this in terms of when I hear people say that I just never hear anything, and I think that is going to be the biggest challenge. And I don't care what industry you're in, is how do you reach people? Because there's so many channels, if you will, using a term now. You talked about what's the term you just used for like an algorithm? 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you were talking to somebody about your communication strategy and algorithms, they'd probably just stare at you like, I don't know what you're talking about. But we have to tailor our outreach now to how a social media channel chooses to put things out and push it out to
Yes.
people. So, but anyway, the thing that's good is people love to hunt and fish and trap in Idaho.
Yep.
And those that don't hunt, fish, and trap on the consumptive side, they love being in Idaho because they may see a deer walk through their yard, even if they live in town. Not that we want to see deer living in town,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, wildlife is common.
Well, that's a really good point that I'm glad you brought up, because when you're talking about crafting your message for an audience, it might seem pretty obvious or pretty like, oh yeah, they're talking about, sportsmen and women or hunters and anglers and trappers, but no, like especially down here in your region, you have a whole different public or an audience where you're not different, but you're, in addition to them, you're also trying to reach the communities and the folks that live in the Wood River Valley or live down here in the Magic Valley, with similar targeted messaging,
Sure. One of the things that we spend a lot of our time talking about down here is human-wildlife conflicts. And a lot of that revolves around, we've got, even though we are still a very rural part of Idaho and smaller communities, we are still expanding out into wildlife habitats.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I'll specifically say the Wood River Valley or even in Twin Falls. And so now we have more, I don't know if I want to say opportunities or more times when people in that urban wildlife interface where you have people and wildlife interacting with each other. And sometimes those can put some public safety issues out there. And so we spend a lot of our time educating people how to live responsibly around wildlife. Because
real quick, where is the Wood River Valley for folks that don't live in Idaho?
So the Wood River Valley, if you've ever heard of the ski resort Sun Valley, you have Sun Valley, Ketchum. It's north of where our office is here in Jerome by about 75 miles.
Okay.
It's a beautiful area. And the nice part about it is they're urban communities, but in a mountain setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I should point out, our region is actually huge. For those in Idaho and listening and understand the kind of these landmarks, so our region extends up to what is known as Galena Summit, which overlooks into the Sawtooth Valley. We go east towards Pocatello to the to the American Falls area. We go as far south as the Utah-Nevada border, and then as far west as Mountain Home. So we are the second largest region in the state in terms of fish and game.
Yeah.
So it's a huge area, but the diversity of wildlife is incredible.
Yeah.
Recreational opportunities are here. It's a great place to live, and especially if you love getting outside.
Yeah.
How diverse are the population centers too?
That's a great question, because we have, Twin Falls is the largest community in the region, a little over 50,000 people. Then you have the Wood River Valley, which is a concentrated communities, basically the length of the Wood River Valley, which is probably 20 miles. But interspersed between all these communities is farmland.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Very agricultural.
And it's called the Magic Valley because when it was first settled, it was high desert, and they through a series of canals and dams and reservoirs, we were able to tap into water, which made the valley basically become alive with growth because of agriculture. And I've always been heard that, it turned the valley or this part of Idaho magically into green. Mm-hmm. So it's called the Magic Valley. But we're very fortunate that we have access to water, so which then makes it very rich from an agricultural standpoint.
Yes.
and we have the Snake River Canyon goes
Yeah.
right through here.
Yeah.
Those of you listening, if you remember Evel Knievel, who attempted to jump the Snake River Canyon back in 1974. I was actually in Twin Falls in 1974, and but that's our kind of claim to fame along with the Snake River Canyon here.
Did you attempt it after him?
No, but he didn't make it. There's a lot of conjecture as to why he didn't make it, but his parachute came out and he ended up in the canyon.
Oh.
But he survived it. So, it's funny because I'll talk to people that have not a clue where Twin Falls is, and then I say bring up Evel Knievel, and then all of a sudden the light bulb goes off. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
And is it true that's how we do a lot of our aerial surveys nowadays?
Yes. Ramps and motorcycles.
Motorcycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jump ramp with a parachute. We're doing leg counts with a parachute.
Leg counts with parachutes
Yeah.
and side-by-sides.
So you mentioned growing up here, Terry. Did you grow up like with a hunting and fishing background?
I did. You know, I can still remember. We lived in Rupert, which is a small little community about 40 miles to the east of us here in Jerome, where the office is. And I can still remember as a kid, I probably was 3 or 4 years old, going out in the duck blind with my dad. And to this day, if you ever smell a spent shotgun shell, I can pick up a shotgun shell and smell that, and it takes me right back to that deer blind or that duck blind.
Yeah.
And then I had a granddad that taught me how to fish, and of course, living in Alaska, I put a lot of fish in the freezer. So, hunting and fishing has always been a part of my life from as far back as I can remember.
Do you think it'd be possible to have this job and without a background in hunting or fishing, or even a passion for it, or does it definitely benefit?
I'm a little biased because I have a kind of a wildlife degree, so I come with a science background, which definitely helps me do my job because I can be more efficient in articles I'm writing, that kind of a thing, because I can speak the science, but I also like to say I'm a science translator, which is taking the science and putting it in lay terms so that the hunting, fishing, trapping public and any public can understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, because of the work we do, I think it's really important that somebody has that hunting, fishing background because it gives you, in the term, it gives you some street cred.
Yeah.
If
You did it right.
When you're talking to folks that, because it gives you some relatability.
Yeah.
Hunters, anglers, trappers, we love to tell stories,
Yep.
And so if you are trying to convince somebody that what Fish and Game is doing, and when it comes time for storytelling, you don't have a story to tell about that time you shot the mule deer buck, or you caught this big rainbow trout out of Silver Creek. I mean, it's I think it just gives you credibility.
And it helps you
relatability.
relate. Yeah, it relates to your constituents. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. And, one of the things I think that, because I'm starting to hear that more and more people say, Fish and Game is kind of moving towards a non-hunting. They're hiring non-hunters or anti-hunters. And you walk around this office, everybody hunts and fishes. And I think, a lot of times it's you get into this field because you love to hunt and fish.
Yep.
But I will tell you that if you, and it's kind of the joke, that if you are if you like to hunt, you become a fisheries biologist because if you like to hunt, your busiest time is during hunting season if you're a wildlife biologist.
Right.
So you go into the field opposite of what you really like to spend your time doing. But no, I think, the office here in the Magic Valley region, everybody are very avid participants in all of those.
Yeah.
I don't think everybody traps, but I can pretty much say that everybody is an angler, and overwhelming majority are hunters as well.
Yeah. Was there a certain moment when you were younger that kind of triggered a little spark for you that put you on this trajectory to become or to go into like the wildlife or fish and wildlife agency realm?
I always just loved being outside, and I don't know that I actually looked at it as a career. It was just, I loved the opportunity to get outside. And then a long time ago, well before you guys were born, I had the opportunity to work for the Forest Service in the South Hills, the Sawtooth National Forest. And all of a sudden the light bulb went off that, man, I can make this as a career. I can do this as a job. And so, I went through I tried out a couple different colleges, let's just put it that way. But I ended up at University of Idaho and got my undergrad degree there.
There's another.
I know this podcast should be sponsored.
Yeah, it's go Vandals all the way. And there's a lot of Vandals in this building. But I put myself through college, fighting fire with the Forest Service. In my day, they called them interregional crews. We always used to kid that we were one step above a hot shot, because we'd go on fires all over the nation, and the media would come up and they'd say, "Are you a hot shot?" And we go, "No, we're an IR crew." And they'd go, "What's that?" And we go, "One better than the hot shot crew." But it was a great way to put myself to school.
Yeah,
came out debt free, but it really showed me that natural resources is where I belonged, and I got my first opportunity in '91 with Fish and Game, and haven't looked back since.
What did the RCM role look like back then, or was it called something different?
It was called something different. It was called a regional conservation educator, and at that point, the position was really, as the title said, it was really education driven. So it's an acronym, RCE. The folks that held that position back in the day worked very heavily with the K-12 school teachers. Project Wild was a big program, and the department was active in. And so, but now I think over time, the position has changed. We still do education, but it's not the focus of the job. I still think I have like 25 or 30% of my time allocated to education, but I could easily do 100% towards the communication side, because there's so many opportunities to get out and talk to people. I always like to make sure that we have an informed public, because we have to make decisions about fish and wildlife populations all the time. And I think it's important that the public understand why we make those decisions. But most people didn't go to school and have a fisheries or a wildlife degree. So I look at one of our jobs is to build that base knowledge up, so that when we do make a management decision, they understand the science or why we felt it's necessary. So that's what like I said, I kind of view myself as a science translator.
Yeah.
And a transparency officer.
Yeah, I am a firm believer that, as a public servant, it's my obligation to be transparent about who we are and what we do. If people that are listening have lived in or heard about the Magic Valley, we've had situations that it would have made my life a lot simpler just to not sweep something under the rug, but just not publicize it.
Yeah.
But that's not the way that you build public trust.
Right.
So like I say, good, bad, ugly, we talk about it because I think it's important. It gives us credibility back, and we're not afraid to face up. And sometimes things happen outside of our control, and we're just straight up with people on that.
Yeah. It's important as government agents to treat this job with respect on multiple fronts, but also to treat it with integrity as well, and to be able to say, look, either we've messed up, we didn't do something wrong, or to be able to say, hey, because we care about you, we'll continue to be transparent.
Absolutely. I want to be able to look somebody in the eye and know that what I'm telling them is what happened.
Yeah.
And so, and I think people have respected that from us. We were getting beat up pretty bad when I came here from after being in Alaska. But I think now,
Because they brought you back?
Because they brought us back?
Because they brought you back? The region was getting beat up?
No, they didn't. No.
Oh. Like this Thompson guy. We got rid of him once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's just like that bad penny keeps coming back.
It's a yo-yo.
Yeah. No, but I've always, and folks here in the office have heard me say this multiple times, if we don't tell our story, somebody else is going to tell it for us.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have always professed being transparent and proactive in what we do here. And I think the public appreciates that because they love the resource.
Yeah.
People love the fact that's why people are, after COVID, we've had this massive influx of people. When I went to Alaska in 2001, Idaho's population was about 750, 800,000.
Mm-hmm.
It's now over 2 million.
Yeah.
A lot of people are moving here, and a lot of the reasons they are moving here is because of the natural resources we have. And so, what's interesting is now we have people moving in that wanted to hunt but didn't have an opportunity where they came from. So now in our hunter education classes, we'll have a 9-year-old sitting next to somebody in their 40s.
Wow.
And I think that is super cool because what it means is that 40-year-old has decided that they now want to take up hunting as a sport, because I am bound and determined to make sure that our hunting and fishing heritage continues in Idaho. And we do that by recruiting new hunters and anglers into that sport.
Right.
That's a great point. So we've talked about how the job has evolved from what it used to be as an educator. You mentioned education, though. Are you teaching, like you said, 25, 30%? Are you teaching courses, or what does your education hat look like?
So a couple different directions. We have, hunter education and then we just talked about, is a mandatory education program for the department. If the person was born after 1975, they have to have successfully completed a hunter education course. So that is probably our primary education piece, mainly because it's a required piece. And I think here in the Magic Valley, we certify 850, 900 people a year on average, which I think is a pretty good number. And then we also have an aquatic education program. We have
like swim lessons?
No, not so much swim, unless I guess you call it swimming if they fall in. But no, the aquatic education program that we have within the agency is centered around a program called Trout in the Classroom. Mm-hmm. So what we do is we work with schools, 4th grade on up to high school, and we put aquaria in their classroom. And then we give them trout eggs, eyed eggs that have, from our, at least in southern Idaho, come out of the Hayspur hatchery. And so there's a curriculum based around watching these salmon or trout eggs develop. And then in our region, we have a capstone where in the spring, all the kids that were in the Trout in the Classroom program get to go out and actually fish. So we put a fishing pole in hand, and hopefully they'll get out and catch some fish. So we have the Trout in the Classroom program. We also have a trailer that's called a Take Me Fishing trailer. Our trailer is stocked with about 150 fishing poles. So we take that around to community ponds and such in the summertime. One of the things that we find is that most people that we interact with already know how to fish. So this is an opportunity to just get people out, get outside, give them an excuse to go fish. But if somebody shows up, they've never fished before, we can teach them how to tie knots. We can teach them, this sounds crazy, but you teach them how to bait a hook. I grew up doing that, and it's kind of, sometimes it's hard to believe that somebody doesn't know how to put a worm on a hook.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there's enough things that are vying for our time now that is something that has, if it's not prioritized, easily gets pushed to the bottom of the list.
Yep. And a lot of it is just having somebody. So I had mentors. I had a dad and a granddad and aunts and uncles that were avid outdoors people, and so I was exposed to it. And a lot of people don't have that opportunity. Right. So this is a great way for us to be able to be that mentor and give people an opportunity to get outside. We always call fishing a lifetime sport. It's one of those sports that doesn't take a lot of money. And the best part is you can go out and fish and bring dinner home.
Right.
Yeah.
Almost
pretty much year round.
Or not.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible fisher. Horrible.
Ben hasn't eaten in a week.
I haven't. You wouldn't tell.
Yeah.
No, but that, and I think that's one of the really nice parts. I mean, when I go hunting, it's not so much about the harvest, because if it was, I would have quit a long time ago. But it's an opportunity to get outside. But when you hunt, fish, and to a certain extent trap too, you have the ability to take food home.
Right.
And there's nothing better than putting venison steak on the barbecue, or a trout, or whatever it is. And so show me something that you can buy a license for $35 and be able to get 365 days of outdoor activities that provide you with food at the same time.
Yeah,
So,
I can't.
In fresh air and sunshine and everything else.
That's why I like to keep going back to, we need to keep this heritage going into the future. But Ben, you were right. I mean, there are so many things that draw people in different directions now. I've got great niece and nephews, and they, between football, flag football, soccer, skiing, golf, you name it, there's a lot of things vying for their time.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm a little biased, because I think, getting outside and doing some hunting and fishing is always a great opportunity.
Right. So you've talked about education and information. Those are two places where the public would interact with a regional communications manager. Where else would the public maybe see you?
So we're always visible in communities and county fairs. We try to keep our brand, if you will, in front of people, so that they see us as part of the community. So I think the more things that we can do in that sense is a good thing. But those are all kind of the traditional things.
Right.
One thing I didn't bring up on the education side is we have done quite a bit of trainings. Like up in the Wood River Valley, we've been writing grants to the Idaho Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and they have funded those to provide bear spray trainings. So again, it's just opportunities like that, skills-based trainings. We work with 4-H programs. We go to a lot of career fairs, because I'm a huge advocate for getting more people involved, from a career standpoint, exposing them. I think most everybody can probably go, I'm here because I like to hunt and fish, but there's a lot more motivations besides just wanting to hunt and fish, because the love of the outdoors and understanding the science.
I want to talk about some of the other hats that Terry wears.
Hats.
Terry's got many hats.
I do.
Terry, I remember Do you remember this? Like one of my first assignments was to go talk or write about Hayspur Hatchery.
Oh yeah.
And that's when I first met you.
Yeah.
I think it was like 3 years ago. But I remember showing up and you showed up. I thought you were a game warden first because you were all dressed in green. But then you showed up and you pulled out this nice
Come in the
camera.
mist?
Yeah, he just swarmed. Now we're sitting there doing some work at the hatchery, and I'm taking photos and stuff for this article that I'm writing. And Terry shows up with a really nice camera that was nicer than mine, and starts taking all these pictures. And then you were like, "You want to go for a little ride along?" And so we did a little ride along around Silver Creek, and I think we were like looking for like some dead geese or something, or
Yeah.
And I was just like, "Holy cow! There's like so much." And then you went off and did something else the rest of the afternoon. All of this was like, 40 minutes away, 45 minutes from the office. So it's like you were making the rounds, and that was my first taste of what an RCM does. And I'm curious, like, what are some other things that do pop up? You've mentioned you guys go door to door, canvassing information every once in a while when you have to. Like, what are some other things that are beyond the realm of standing in front of a TV camera or writing an article or whatever?
Those traditional, what's non-traditional versus the traditional things you've already talked about.
Yeah. So, and I think that's one of the joys of being able to work in a region. So, I can remember I had only been on the job for like a week, 2 weeks, and it was 5:00. We got a call that we had a moose on the interstate. And Mike McDonald, our regional wildlife manager, walks by my office, and I said, "Hey, can I go?" And he goes, "Nah, you don't need to." And next thing you know, I got in the truck. I didn't ask. So, it was kind of like you just kind of get out there. So now we get a moose on the interstate, or we get an elk entangled in a tomato cage or whatever. A lot of times people go, "Where's Terry?" Because it's just expected that I'm going to go out in the field with him, because, it comes back to, we talked about walking up with a camera. The way to tell the story is visually.
Yeah.
And so I've learned that if you yell at the crew as they're going out to do something, "Hey, take some pictures for me," they come back and they go, "We didn't have time. We were too busy."
Yeah. They drop their phone down in the round pond. So
now, I am out in the field on, so when, our biologists are out doing drive nets and putting collars on mule deer, I'm out there working right alongside of them. I don't carry nets like I used to be able to because I'm old. But, mugging deer. But a lot of it is documenting what we're doing, because these are activities that the public doesn't get to see us do because they're done up in the hills and they're just not conducive to having public around. So I am the being able to be the eyes of the agency and tell that story back. So, we elk trapping. That was one of those that, the one day we had to meet here at the office at 4:30 in the morning to go up elk trapping. And, but, it's one of those, it's like, okay, I got up early and it was painful, but what an experience, to be able to be out there on the landscape. So one of the things I have to give huge thank yous to this region, to the staff, is that they have let me climb in the truck with them. The only thing I don't get to do is go fly. Mm-hmm. I would love to be up there flying with them, but, very tight quarters, and they're actually doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, which is counting deer or whatever.
You just have a camera.
Yeah, but, I could take,
the pictures you could take.
Oh, it would, yeah. But so I don't get to do everything, but I think it's important for the communication manager to capture the visuals of these activities, but also be able to speak firsthand about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Because again, it goes back to so much of what we do is out of sight of the public. Mm-hmm. And just because you don't see us out there doesn't mean we're not super busy.
Right.
The staff are incredibly busy But the passion for the work that we do here and in every region across the state, same way up in Alaska, the people who are doing this work are doing it because they love the work and they're committed to the work. Because you're not going to get rich doing this.
No.
I may look like a rich guy, but trust me,
those gold teeth, Terry, tell a different story.
All 9 of them.
All 9 of those gold teeth. His retirement's in his mouth.
Talk about street cred,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. So, but wealth doesn't always come in monetary. I have led the richest life I think anybody could ever dream of. And I think most people would say the same that work here.
That's definitely the consensus that I've gathered since. I don't know if I've ever met a single person that says, "Oh yeah, I'm doing it for the money."
Yeah.
There you go.
Because the experiences I think far outweigh it.
Oh yeah. And I'm doing things in this job that people would pay to do.
Right.
And it's just part of the day. And it's always interesting because there's never a day that is the same. It's funny because I'll write up a list of things that need to get done, and at the end of the day, none of those things ever get done. So what I do then is I add the things that I did that day, and then I cross them out so that I can look back and say, "Oh, I did accomplish some
I
things."
accomplished something today.
Yeah. But no, it's a super busy work environment, but can't beat it.
Yeah. You mentioned the visual component to what you do and the importance it is to the agency to document, whether it's telling stories or taking photos or video, whatever it is, talking on a podcast about it, whatever. And when I was going in undergrad wanting to be a writer, I've loved the outdoors. I loved wildlife and things like that, but I didn't know that there was a bridge between the two. I don't know if a message is the right word, but what's some advice or some direction that you can offer to folks, whether they're young or have kids that are going through college or wanting to find another career path themselves, that you've kind of uncovered in 34 years, that there's a lot of creative folks out there that like to take photos or videos or whatever, right? But they may not know that there's a way to get into the wildlife world. What are some things that you've learned?
Yeah, boy, that's a great question because, when I started, the technology that we're using now wasn't even dreamed of because I actually started with Fish and Game before we had email. That shows you how long
the silence there.
That was profound.
Trying to comprehend, like, what?
There is a world before email.
I don't remember that.
Oh.
So, I think a lot of it now is, so we are a science-based agency. So I think the best advice I can give people is if you want to work for Fish and Game in any role, it doesn't matter if it's on the communication side, but obviously on the fish, wildlife, or habitat side too, or even in enforcement, the science background is critical. Mm-hmm. So, we don't have education requirements anymore, on job announcements and things like that. But to be competitive in today's natural resource environment, you're going to have a degree. And that's not to discourage anybody or anything, but that's just reality. Yeah. The competition is stiff for jobs. And, we've got people in this office that have master's degrees that are in technician roles. So, there's a certain, you work your way up. Most people in this office started as technicians and then have moved up to regional biologists or habitat biologists, fisheries biologists. So the biggest thing is some kind of a science background is going to make you more employable, I would say, but then also a diversity of skills. They advertised for my position not too long ago, and the number of people that applied shows that there's a lot of interest in it, and people are coming in with a lot of communication skills that probably back in my day would have been unheard of. but if, somebody young trying to get into the field, volunteer, get out. Nothing is better if you're a hiring manager and you get this long list of applicants to pick from, if there's a name on there that they can put a face to, that's the best way to do it. And you get that experience by coming and volunteering, and one that shows us interest, shows us work ethic, and you're a known entity. So I always encourage people to spend as much, granted, I realize, especially if you're older, that, you got to maybe have a family and you don't have as much time to volunteer because you're trying to put food on the table. But any opportunity you have to gain experience, because it doesn't matter if it's paid or volunteer experience, put it on a resume, because that's going to make you more hireable. Yeah. But on the communication side, I love that side of the work, and like I say, I've been extremely lucky in all the positions I've held throughout my career. But I look at all of them as serving hunters, anglers, and trappers in the States.
Yeah, a lifetime of service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're a pretty artistic guy, Terry. Are there any books or films that have inspired you that you've enjoyed with your wildlife and fisheries background? I know you and Bieri were chatting about Patrick McManus before we started recording.
Yep. Yeah. So Patrick McManus, if anybody has had the opportunity to read those books, they are, especially if you have experiences of being outside, or as a kid growing up, and being outside and hunting, fishing, or just riding a bike,
I laugh because there's so many stories that are just so funny of him riding his.
But the thing is, not only they're funny, but they're relatable, because almost every story I could almost see myself as.
When you killed your first deer, did you put it over the handlebars of your bike?
No, I didn't do that. But that's. But those are the kind of things that I think stay with you. I'm not a big movie guy, so I can't really point to much. I mean, I watched, years ago, A River Runs Through It, and that was,
Terry's not funny.
Yeah. So I don't. It's always funny in the office because people are always doing movie references, and they just go right over my head.
Yeah, just like that one.
Yeah, you didn't get it.
No, I didn't.
You have to rewatch it, Terry.
Yeah,
on your retirement break.
Yeah, you're gonna have plenty of time.
Yeah,
whatever couch you'll be sitting on in whatever foreign land.
No, I am not going to be one sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
I've done this. I've been working way longer than 34 years. 34 is just with one agency.
Yeah.
And the whole thought of just stopping that just doesn't fit well with my personality type. And plus, I've had a career of public service,
right?
And it's always, I think I still have that desire to keep giving back.
Right.
So you'll see me doing some volunteer work, various places, and probably fish and pole in my hand too. Yeah.
Flip flops.
Yeah. There might be some pair of flip flops in that as well.
So let's talk a little bit about the. I have teenagers at home, and they keep referencing the lore, specifically dad lore that I impart on them. Some people call it wisdom, some people call it stories, but they're trying to collect their own dad lore. So what is some of the RCM lore? What is some of the Terry Thompson lore that you have? Like, I don't know, some of your public interaction stories, good, bad, or ugly.
I got one. Isn't it true that you scuba dived in the MK Nature Center to clean it when they were dredging it?
I did
several years ago.
Yeah, in fact, that was one of those things that who would have known that when I became the Nature Center superintendent, I was going to get paid to go get certified to scuba dive.
That sounds great.
Fishing game's own Aquaman.
Yeah. So
Swamp creature.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got to scuba dive in the nature center, which is pretty amazing. Except if anybody's familiar with it, it's got this large pond, and as soon as I started stirring up sediment, visibility soon became like less than an inch.
Did you find anything cool in there? Like right now, I could imagine you would find a bunch of cell phones. That's probably it. Sunglasses.
Sunglasses,
Yeah.
flip-flops.
So it was interesting. People would throw money in. And it's the
While you
it's
were in
the
there?
it's the it's the wishing well mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, when I'd be out there and I'd see somebody throw, money in, I'd always go up to them and just say, I'm trying to understand why you're throwing money in. And they said, well, that's what you do. And I said, well, as soon as it left your hand, that's litter. And they were like, never really thought of it that way. But
That is a weird one.
yeah,
Like just culturally, why do we throw money in water?
Especially muddy, choppy water like the nature center pond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you expect to get out of that?
Yeah, I don't know. But so we and the thing is, I think some people would say, oh, well, I'm just donating money. Well, so we'd go and we'd dive for 3
that's one way to
hours
look at it.
Yeah,
and
sure.
get about $1.25, and pennies and dimes and nickels.
About double the hourly rate back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of other lore. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you've got, and this is one of those times in life where people put you on the spot and like, tell me your favorite thing, tell me your worst thing. But there's like, through the pictures you've taken too, where's maybe some of your favorite places to photograph? You maybe don't have to say specifics. It's kind of like a fishing spot for photographers,
No, because, and I think that's the really cool part about Idaho is you don't have to travel very far to get to some amazing places. So here's one. Unfortunately, the Snake River here in Twin Falls got quagga mussels in it.
Right.
That is not a claim to fame that Idaho ever wanted to have, and much less have it here in the region. But last fall, I got to go on the river, and I was on a boat at the base of the falls. I took a bunch of video. You guys are going to have to see this because it's really cool video. And very few people have been able to be in that location taking video.
Yeah.
And so, the job has afforded me some really cool opportunities to get into areas that I normally wouldn't have. Wood River Valley, Silver Creek, Connor talked about the day we were actually looking for an injured goose, if I remember right, or was it a swan?
It was a swan injured.
Yeah, swan.
Yeah.
Yep. But there's moose around Silver Creek, and so it's kind of like everywhere you turn, there is a palette of something to take a picture of, and it's just been. I probably wish I, in some situations, have taken more pictures because it is my job.
Yeah.
But
with digital, you can delete them.
Oh yeah, I was very lucky to be able to purchase a nice digital SLR for my work here, and in fact, this morning I was just looking at my external hard drive. I've got over 1 terabyte of video and pictures that I've taken just, in a short minute, and that's not all of them.
Yeah.
But it's, but again, that's going to, eventually it's going to go to help tell a story
Right.
about who we are, what we do, and the people that work here. Because without the people that work here, we would be nothing. And if you ever have an opportunity to visit with a fishing game staff anywhere in the state, hopefully you're going to walk away impressed by the passion that they bring to the job and the knowledge and the willingness to share that knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you have a very favorite photograph that you've taken? What's let me ask this. Maybe not favorite. What have you taken a photograph or a video that's gone viral?
Oh. Didn't you shoot the ringtail? Or was that Jenny?
No, we had a ringtail. We had a ringtail. A lot of people call them cats, but they're not a cat. But we had a ringtail here in Twin Falls that I did not take it, but I told the story.
Oh, okay.
So
That does not answer my question.
well, so they're
He hijacked that one.
yeah, they're probably it's definitely not viral, but probably my favorite picture was we were up in Ketchum, and we were actually doing a story on Idaho Public Television about urban wildlife, and after we got done with that, we had a situation with a mountain lion in Ketchum. And so Mike McDonald, who's our regional wildlife manager, and Josh Royce, who was our regional wildlife regional enforcement officer, we went up to this house and we said, "Yeah, we've got a report of a mountain lion here." And the thing that was interesting is there was a mountain lion there, Big Tom, and it was only like 30 feet from the back door of this house, and the family would let their little dog out to go potty every so often. And this big lion it's actually cached an elk calf, probably 250, 300 pound elk in this little depression behind their house. And so I was able to get at a vantage point above on an external staircase on this house. And so I'm up there taking pictures of this lion, and the lion's eyes are just focused right on me, and I'm trying to play
my
the
palms
part.
are sweating as you're telling the story.
But it was such a cool opportunity. Well, then we had two officers there, and they did some hazing with some rubber buckshot to get the lion to move. And so the two officers take off after the lion after they hit it with the buckshot. That's non-lethal, so they was just stinging it to give it some painful stimulus to leave. So Mike McDonald and I were just walking up the street behind it, and then all of a sudden we both realized at the same time that we don't know where that lion's at.
Yeah.
And so
And you're holding a camera.
yeah. We had nothing, but the image that I got from that, I use it in a lot of my press releases because it's just this big Tom looking through the brush right at me. So that was probably my that's one of the images that I'll cherish forever, just because it was such an amazing opportunity and experience, and that Tom definitely knew where I was at.
Yeah.
But I never did feel like I was.
Tom meet Terry.
Yeah.
Terry meet Tom.
Really quick, I want to know, what is the worst thing that you've ever smelled on the job?
Oh man, fish.
Like in what capacity? In what state?
Idaho.
Yeah, no. I don't even know if I want to tell this story because there might be the statute of limitations is not expired yet. I didn't do anything illegal, but it was just something I did at headquarters in Boise unknowingly that flooded the building with some odoriferous.
Well, that building's not there anymore.
I know
that's
that
true.
building is
You're
gone.
in the clear.
But some of the people that were impacted by that
That
are
was
still
Terry?
around. Yeah.
The truth comes out
Oh, Terry.
today on Hook
But
and
it was
Bulletin.
some salmon that got left in a cooler for an extended period of time, and they basically liquefied. And I dumped them out, and it kind of
Bones
flooded.
and all, or
It wasn't much bones left, but yes, the whole thing, and the odoriferous remnants swept through headquarters.
how long had it been in the cooler?
Over a month.
Woof.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty good. But in Alaska, I had times just on riverbanks with thousands of decaying salmon that was pretty strong too.
Now let's, if we can, talk about just a little bit of that time in Alaska. Like, how was it a similar role in Alaska?
So I managed what was my initial job up there was I managed what was called a National Estuarine Research Reserve. So it's a state-federal partnership between the states and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Oh, no,
NOAA.
yeah.
So, so we were studying estuaries, and at that time there were 24 research reserves around the nation, and so we were studying estuarine science, salmon, ocean productivity, plankton, all that kind of good stuff. And then I transitioned from managing the research reserve to become the statewide communications coordinator for the Division of Sportfish.
Okay.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
And Alaska's huge.
Yeah.
So when you say statewide coordinator for sportfish, it was a great job.
Big
Big
job.
Big job, yeah, and a lot of it was, the resources in Alaska are stunning, but I'll take it's weird because from a natural resource standpoint, Alaska is top notch.
Yeah.
From a people of the agency, I'll take Idaho Fish and Game. Not that the people in Alaska were bad or anything like that, but and I think you've probably heard it when you talk to other people in the agency. We call it a family, and it's because we have each other's backs. I know if I was to go in any community in Idaho and my car breaks down, all I'd have to do is call the nearest fish and game person, and they'd be there to help me.
Yeah.
They may not, and there's only slightly over 500 people in permanent staff in the whole state of Idaho. So if you don't know them personally, you at least know their name.
Yeah.
And so,
Or somebody will.
Yeah.
Somebody will be able to vouch and say, hey.
yeah, maybe not with you, but you never,
Yeah.
You're the salmon guy.
It's
You're that rotten salmon guy.
it's earned.
Yeah, no, but Alaska was an amazing opportunity, and it was professionally, it was an amazing job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some things about the job that you have now that you're not necessarily going to miss? And then we'll end on a positive note with some of the things that you are going to miss.
That you will miss.
Yeah.
As with any job, there are administrative processes. I think, there are times when, and I know that they are kind of the necessary evil of any time that you work. And it doesn't matter if it's a government agency or private industry, there are always administrative processes that you have to follow for timekeeping and purchases and things like that. And if there's ever a frustrating time, I have a lot of things I need to get done, but I also have to process these P-card receipts and things like that. But in the scheme of the world, that's
So small.
It's so small. Yeah. So there's really not a whole lot that I'm going to walk away from and go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm done with that.
Yeah.
That's
So office administration will not be missed.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you're going to force me to say something, yeah, because I'm getting two sets of eyeballs staring at me like
We want something.
three.
We want
yeah,
something.
Yeah. I'm forced to give an answer,
Yeah.
but yeah.
You can tell us off mic how many pens you're going to take with you. Don't.
Yeah.
We can cut that out.
What about some of the happier moments, Terry?
That's the good part of the job happens every day. And probably and it's obviously it's staff because I love the people I work with, but I also equally love working with the public.
Yeah.
We are asked to do a job to ensure that Idaho residents have healthy fish and wildlife populations now and into the future. And so, and a lot of that is through knowledge and enjoyment of what we have. So, every day, I help at the front desk or whatever, taking phone calls, answering questions. That's a highlight. Because it would be hard to come up and say that I had one thing that just made my career, but I think it's every day coming to work and being able to work with residents of Idaho, residents of Alaska, and make sure that they know that their resources are being stewarded responsibly, and that we listen, we hear them.
Yeah.
Because we do. It's the resources, Fish and Wildlife resources, belong to the state of Idaho. So it doesn't matter if you are a hunter or a non-hunter. The goal is still the same: make sure we have wildlife populations into the future.
We've had a conversation with another RCM, and he was telling us just stories. We were just sitting around telling stories, and one of the things that he enlightened us on was that part of your role is to be a duty officer.
Oh, yes.
What does that entail? And that sounds like that job, so I'll let you describe it. It sounds like that could be one of those places where every story starts.
Yes. So a duty officer, so everybody that works in a regional office every month has the opportunity to work the front desk. Each region kind of does things a little bit differently. Some have it where they just answer phones or have certain roles. Here in our region in the Magic Valley, when you are duty officer, you are selling licenses. Mm-hmm. You are checking in bears, mountain lions, wolves. And that means pulling teeth. You're tagging bobcat pelts that come in. But probably the thing that you spend most of your time doing is answering the phone.
Yeah.
And we always kiddingly say, do people lie awake at night to think up the most bizarre question? Because this is one of those times because, they're calling because they have a question. And many times it's a regulation question. Mm-hmm. And when you realize that your answer to them could, if it was wrong, could lead them to get a citation. Mm-hmm. So you have to be very careful that what you're telling them is
correct,
absolutely correct, which we were striving to do anyway. But it can't be one of these things of, I think the limit is 3. It's like, okay, on page whatever in the regulation or the rule book. So, but there are so many times you answer that phone and the question is, you go, I've worked for 34 years and I've never heard that question before in my life. And so it's all the running joke is kind of, you laid awake all night to think up that one, didn't you? And
is part of that down here the dispatching of hurt animals?
There are times, yes. If we get a call that, say, a deer has been hit alongside the road and it's still alive, and the person that called in doesn't have the means to put it down, the duty officer has to go out and do that, or pick up a dead animal that's
which could be interesting for a person that doesn't. They signed up to be a front desk attendant, not knowing that.
Usually, so. We have customer service representatives, but like if it's going out and dispatching an animal, usually it's a biologist that's filling in as the duty officer. So it kind of comes with the territory. But the first time not first time, but one of the first few times that I was duty officer, I was reading through the daily tasks, and it talked about grabbing a firearm and going out and putting an animal down, and I was like, I don't even know where in the office to go find a shotgun,
the shotgun closet.
Yeah. But, it's, I will, and this is kind of tongue in cheek, but it's one of the few work spaces where you can walk down the hallway with a shotgun and nobody blinks.
Yeah.
People
ask, what is that?
Yeah. People are like, ooh, let me see.
Yeah. What kind is that?
Yeah. So, but at the same time, again, it's an opportunity to help people. Mm-hmm. And I think, we all recognize that that's an important part of our job. We may grumble at, oh, it's my turn to be DO again. But it's important. In fact, I have made a suggestion that maybe some of our headquarters staff might like to come out and be DO for a couple days in the region. Just putting it out there.
No thanks.
Because I think the interesting thing is this is the great way when you say, oh yeah, I know the regs. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you take the phone call and you go, oh, okay, maybe I don't know them as well as I thought I did. So, and it goes back to everything that the agency does. There's so much information. It's scary.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot, yes.
But I do think it's a great opportunity because in headquarters, we don't have DOs,
right,
duty officers. So I do think, and I say this in seriousness, I do think it would be a great opportunity for folks to get out in the regions and kind of get a taste for what happens here.
Well, it's almost 5. I'll do it for the last half hour here.
I'm duty officer next Monday, so if you want to come and take my spot, I'll relinquish it.
Will it be your last time?
It'll be my last duty officer.
I'm not going to take that experience away from you.
No, it will be my last duty officer, but at the same time, as official duty officer, but as regional communication manager, it's every day I'm up at the front desk helping and things like that. But that's most people are too. Yep. You walk by, you see them with 4 deep at the customer service counter. We all chip in to help.
Yeah, it's a different experience, hands down, coming to the region than working at headquarters.
Absolutely,
for sure. When you talk about family, I understand why it would feel like a family here. I've worked in enough businesses, corporations where there's a satellite headquarter, and that group gets to bond over something else.
Yeah.
Together, and they have shared experiences because something happens, or a biologist is going through a hard time, or something that.
Or Terry's stranded on the side of the road.
Terry's stranded on the side of the road, or whatever. There's just a very palpable sense of strong community bonds within these regional offices.
And the thing too is, the turnover isn't typically very high. We've had some turnover lately, but what happens is you get to see families grow.
Yeah.
Maybe when the person started, they weren't even married, and then the next thing you know, they're married and they got 3 kids,
right.
And you get to watch those kids grow up. And so it's not only is it just a relationship with the employee, but you develop a relationship with their family, right, as well.
Yeah.
And which I think just makes it tighter. And we like each other enough that we'll go fishing together, or go hunting together, or whatever it is.
Go get a beer after work. And
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Terry, thank you for sitting down with us. Thank you, probably on behalf of the state of Idaho. I'm sure the governor will come down and shake your hand at some point. That's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because by the time this airs, it'll be long gone. So let's just pretend that he did come down and shake your hand and say thank you. But on behalf of the citizenry of the state of Idaho, thank you for your time. Thank you from all the folks in the Magic Valley as well. I'm sure you'll be missed. Your voice will be missed. But we'll live on in perpetuity through our podcast. So thank you for all your time. And
yeah, thank you. And if you ever take my intro out of Hook and Bulletin, I'm going to be crushed. But because that's probably my biggest claim to fame.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll have to trademark it, I guess.
It has to be.
Put it into Idaho code.
He's gonna start needing royalties and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever streams of income you can get in retirement. So I hear.
If we ever need a guest host too, we'll ship you up and get you on air.
No, and I would say thank you both for the opportunity to go on the podcast, because this is great. It's a great way to reach out and talk to people, because the one takeaway I hope people get from this is we're real people.
Yeah.
And we love what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, man.